week. We met him last week, and if you don't remember or missed it, here's a reminder. James is our Nike-wearing, Larry the Cable Guy watching Home Depot employee. Because he is that much of a just do it, get it done, roll up your shirt sleeves, and get to more doing kind of guy. And we remember that James calls us to action, insisting, not just asking, insisting that faith produce works. Faith must do something. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. So last week, after all this talk of what we must do, it might seem a little strange that now James is going on and on about words. It seems that it's not enough to just do the work of God, that faith must do something, but now faith must say something too. You see, for James, using words wisely is among one of our most important works. It is a spiritual discipline which we practice and cultivate. Today, James calls us to mind our tongue, not just our actions. I don't know about you, but I suspect this might make us a little uncomfortable, because we know how difficult that can be. After all, the tongue isn't very easy to control, at least not for me. Sometimes, at the best of times, we joke about it. Like the bloopers at the end of a movie, we laugh over all the times that our tongue gets tripped up on words. Or like as children, when we make a game of challenging one another to tongue twisters. Silly rhymes about Sally and Peter and woodchucks and seashells and picking pecks of peppers. All meant to tie the tongue up in knots. We dare one another to master the tongue, declaring, try saying that 10 times fast. But as we can tell by James' scathing review of the tongue, these silly tongue twisters aren't the kind that he is worried about. James doesn't call the tongue a flame of fire set ablaze by hell simply because of its slip-ups in a childhood rhyme. It isn't the bloopers that James is worried about when he declares that the tongue is a restless evil full of deadly poison just waiting and ready to contaminate our whole lives. No, James is much more concerned here with those words that haunt us, those words that slipped out and cut like a knife. You know, those words that you wish you could take back, those words that you wish could be unheard and unsaid but can't. Or worse yet, the words that we choose because of their poison, words which sow seeds of hatred and division, violence and discrimination, oppression and hurt. James is concerned with the real tongue twisters. Those words that tie up not only our tongue, but our hearts too. Words which curse God's creation. Words which cut down God's kingdom, even while just before they offered praise to God. Those are the real tongue twisters. And today, James calls our attention to them, to our words, because there's something else about James. He's not just a get it done, just do it kind of guy. He is also a man of wisdom. The letter of James was originally meant to teach people, to instruct everyone who heard it. Plain and simple, it is a letter of wisdom. So James, in his wisdom and understanding, calls our attention to the tongue because he knows that the tongue can twist the heart. He knows that words are like the rudder on a ship, able to direct where the heart goes to. Or like a bit in the mouth of a horse, the tongue can lead our whole selves, our body and our mind too. James understands the power of our words. Consider how strongly our words do create our world. Anyone that has ever gotten lost in a story knows the power of our words. When reading a book and you abandon your own world to step inside the one the author creates, full of images so vivid and characters so real, that even when the words run out, that world lives on in your imagination. But it's not just in stories. Our words, the ones we use every day, create the world that we live in. They color our perspective on how we see what happens around us. Perhaps that's why in the beginning God did create the world with only a few words. Let there be light. Let us make humanity in our image. Yes, words are powerful. They shape our understanding. They give us a window into knowing things we might otherwise never know. Like when God brought all the creatures before Adam so that Adam could name them. The power of naming, of giving words to something, brought knowledge, mastery. Yes, words are powerful. They allow us to imagine that all things might be possible. Like in the story of the Tower of Babel, when all humankind spoke the same language. All the people came together and speaking the same language, they collaborated to build a tower which could possibly reach all the way to the heavens. At the time, God had to scramble their language to stop such a prideful undertaking. God realized the power we have when we all speak the same words together. Yes, words are powerful. They energize us and they inspire us. It's like the crowning moment of any good sports movie when the coach rallies the team on to victory with some words to uplift the players. Words are powerful. They're our means of spreading the good news. They help us to form relationships. They help us to create a sense of community. Just like at the time of Pentecost, the Holy Spirit came upon the apostles and gave them the gift of speaking in all languages. In that experience, it was the words that allowed everyone to hear and understand and know the good news of God and Jesus Christ. But we surely know that our words are a gift. It's why parents listen anxiously for their child's first word. It's why we agonize over the words that we say, the ones we give at a presentation, that we practice them. It's why we consider the words that we sing in our songs. It's why I've spent so much time this past week considering the words I'll use next week at my friend's wedding for her toast. It's why at the end of life, we put so much emphasis on the last words that we say. We know the power behind our words. James, too, understood the weight of our words. I suspect that's why for all of the terrible things that he said about the tongue, he never tells us to abandon it altogether. He very well could have, by the way. It would not have been the first time there was such a teaching. If we recall, the Gospels of Matthew and Mark tell of a time when Jesus taught, if part of your body caused you to sin, it was best to just cast it off completely. In Mark chapter 9, for instance, Jesus teaches us, if your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life maimed than with 2 hands to go into hell, where the fire never goes out. And if your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off. It is better for you to enter life crippled than to have 2 feet and be thrown into hell. And if your eye causes you to stumble, pluck it out. It is better for you to enter the kingdom of God with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into hell. So why not here? Why not with the tongue, too? It's one of the smallest members of the body, that's what James says, and we know that. And if it's such a vicious evil, then why not just cast it aside, silence it altogether? After all, wouldn't that prevent us from falling into the trouble of those real tongue twisters? The times when our heart is twisted because our words of praise follow words of prejudice? Then why is James all about taming the tongue instead of maiming the tongue? The answer, quite simply, goes back to last week. James demands that we put our faith into works. James calls us to fulfill God's love, to God's law, to love our neighbor. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And today, James teaches us that to put our faith into works, we must also put it into words. In order to love our neighbor, it is not enough to remain silent, to hold back our hurtful and hateful words. That might keep the law, but our silence does nothing to actually fulfill the law. For all their danger and evil, James simply will not let us relinquish the power of our words. James is not content merely with our silence. Instead, our words must speak love to our neighbors. Our words must bless all of God's creation. Our words must sing praise to God. They must be acceptable in God's sight. They must build God's kingdom. It's not enough to just not destroy it. But for living in a world in which words constantly surround us, words right now, words in conversation, words in books, on signs, in text messages, in songs, words with friends, words in movies, on Facebook and blogs, words everywhere, it's still surprisingly difficult to control them. Despite how often we use them, it's still too hard to always get them right. So often our words seem like real twisters that appear as storms out of nowhere, wreaking destruction in the blink of an eye. Words that lie, words that belittle others, words of frustration that lack compassion, words that gossip and spread rumors, words that draw stereotypes, words of hatred, words that objectify humans so we can do with them as we please, words of evil. There are just so many ways our words can be unfaithful. And it's just so hard to manage them all. It's no wonder James says we have tamed all kinds of animals, but no one can tame the tongue. I don't know about you, but to me, there are many times it just seems an impossible task. But as we remember from last week, James doesn't call us to what is easy. James only calls us to what is faithful. He teaches us that full spiritual maturity comes from taming the tongue. James reminds us of our call to faithfulness, saying, with the tongue we bless the Lord and Father and curse human beings made in God's likeness. Blessing and cursing from the same mouths. My brothers and sisters, it just shouldn't be this way. It just shouldn't be this way. A grapevine doesn't bear figs. Salt water doesn't flow from a freshwater spring, any more than a faithful tongue should bear words of hatred. It just shouldn't be this way. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. That's it. That's my challenge for today. That's your challenge for today. To remember that it just shouldn't be this way. All of our words should give blessing to God's creation. All of our words should sing God's praise. All of our words should speak love to our neighbors. All of our words should resist the hatred that others spew. All of our words should resist the lies that others speak. All of our words should encourage all of God's children and build up God's kingdom. Our words should only tell the truth, the capital T truth of God. So go today to remember the power that our words have. Go to use that power to the glory of God, to speak more faithfully, to hold our tongues when necessary, and to avoid those dangerous tongue twisters which will confuse our hearts as well. For James knows that our old adage that sticks and stones may break our bones, but words can never hurt me, is simply not true. James calls us to reclaim the power of our words and to use them more faithfully. So instead of teaching your children that old rhyme, why not teach them this new tongue twister instead? Curse the curses which cut the kingdom, but be a blessing which builds it. I dare you to say that 10 times fast. Curse the curses which cut the kingdom, but be a blessing which builds it. Curse the curses which cut the kingdom, but be a blessing which builds it. I'll stop there because it will twist me up. But while I dare you to say that 10 times fast, James dares you to actually do it. No ifs, ands, or buts about it.